Hello, good evening, and welcome to Anything Goes. Hope you're all doing all right out there this weekend. With me, as always, Jason. How are you?
So far, so good. Even though it finally snowed for the first time this year,
Oh,
nice fluffy snow. I imagine we're still warmer than you are right now.
tonight it's warmed up a little bit. Thankfully, it's six. It's six, so that's I'll have a look now. $42.8.
That's not bad.
Well, yeah, it's not
But
great though, is it?
no, it's not great considering your radiator's out. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So are we going to be talking radiator to repair today, or
No, not yet. Next week we'll be talking about
right.
that when it happens.
Okay.
It's boiler repair actually, so
But
that's another.
y'all still use steam for where you're at? Out of curiosity, is that
Like for what exactly?
for your heat? Is that a
No.
okay? That's
Steam
cool.
engines. We have old steam engines, trains that run off steam.
Right, but you have a boiler, so is it
Uh,
just the steam's going through the radiator? That's what's
no,
get it? No, it's something else. Okay.
no, it's cold water going through tiny heated piping, basically.
Okay.
I have instant. I don't have a boiler with a load of hot water in it. I have it's called an Economy 7, and basically when I want the hot water, I put the tap on, and the cold water is going into these tiny tubes, loads of them all the way around. By the time it comes to the tap, it's hot water.
I get it. Yeah.
So yeah. Thankfully, I've still got hot water.
Yeah.
If I didn't
That
have
would.
that would be even worse.
Yeah.
Even worse. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing, is it? People are going through worse things, but being cold isn't nice.
No.
It's a nice feeling. So I'm doing my best though to, keep warm,
Yeah.
snuggle to the dog and stuff like that.
Yes.
But that's interesting. You've got some snow
Yeah.
because have you got enough? I mean, like, there's a lot, is there? You could.
Where I'm at, I think it's basically an inch, maybe inch and a quarter.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, nothing, not too bad. So where I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we're North Texas, but we're not as like far north as the Panhandle. Like they get snow all the time. We're sort of like right there on the edge, so we usually get 1 week of a good hard freeze. Usually we don't get ice, we get or snow. We get like ice. It's ice for about a week. Everyone just kind of crouches down and waits for it to pass, and then we're fine. So, but I don't even think it's going to be that bad this year. So,
Yeah, we had a lot of ice because it got cold. We only have a smidge of it, like you say, and then it goes to freezing. And in the morning, and there's some, because we're quite built up around here. Not all the
right.
streets get any sunlight, or there's high walls, and it's shadow all day, and those spots stay really, really icy.
Yeah.
But I had a little sort of like light bulb. It's not a light bulb moment. It's like when you feel like you've hit something important, but
Inspiration.
you don't know where to go with it. You don't know where to go with it, but you feel like it could be something to work with, to think about. And it was because over the weekend we've been talking about BIGFOOT. I did 2 hours yesterday, a couple of shows, and we're talking about do Sasquatch walk back on their footprints to
Right.
because some people have said that or think that, that they will walk back so as people don't know where they're going. But I mean, have you ever walked back in your footprints? How easy, actually, physically, would it be to step back, to make it look like there's only one set?
I've never been in a situation to do it. I know people who, I know there's some people who've trained to do it, and they can do it quite efficiently. And if it's something that you, the one thing I've come to believe is that anything that your life depends on, you're going to do really well.
But say you don't have a neck and you're 4 feet wide, and I don't think it's possible. for it to be able to move, it's just to see where it's going without. I think that's. But my main thing is that I feel that it could be a weakness in Bigfoot because it doesn't have the ability to snap its head round like a deer or a rabbit or a fox could. It has to move its whole upper back, I'm guessing, to get its head round. And I just wonder how that affects it, if it affects it, if it changes some of the things that it might not be able to do.
Well, so that's a great question. I'm thinking about that because you're right. It would make certain movements limited. I guess the real question is how good is their peripheral vision, right? Like my peripheral vision, I can get to about here before I really start losing real definition, right? And that's actually sort of behind, where my ears are. So basically, I can kind of see motion and stuff way back over here. If they've got good peripheral vision, then it may not be as big of a hindrance as one would imagine. Like maybe they just need to make maybe instead of it being like this for us, maybe they just do like that, right? It's less of a turn because they can move their eyes and their peripherals just good enough. That's not the same. It's not as limiting, but I think that's a great question. That's actually a very Grover Crancian. I'm coining that term. It's a very Crancian question to ask because Grover Krantz, one of the things he did is he was for those who, I mean, everyone in Bigfooting should know who Grover Krantz is by now. He physical anthropologist, but he actually did this experiment once because his argument was that the reason primitive man had these larger frontal brows was to actually keep long hair out of their eyes, right? So he actually walked around for like 2 months. He grew his hair out long and created this fake brow ridge that he wore for 2 months, just doing things, and it was an experiment. I think your question actually, I mean, that really does. I mean, that's a great point. Like, it's like we know they don't have that kind of upper flexibility because of those large muscles back here. They don't have much of a neck. It seems like this is sort of a very limited range. So it seems like that should be a weakness. It doesn't seem, but I mean, up till now, we haven't seen a weakness. Maybe it's because of the peripheral vision.
Maybe a disadvantage. Maybe that's the better word to say rather than a weakness, but
a disadvantage. Well, I guess it would also mean perhaps they found ways of compensating for it, because the whole idea of like you said, stepping backwards in their tracks. Tex has thought about that as well. He's presented that on the Monday show as well. And I think that's something you could probably, if, like I said, anything your life depends on, you can usually be pretty good at. So it may be something that they're not necessarily even having to stop and turn around. They can just remember where they are. Because really that whole doubling back thing is only really going to fool people in something like snow. Right?
Yeah.
It's, because you're looking for the tracks in the snow. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a great observation about their limited head movement. So maybe what you're saying is we sneak up from them from behind.
I don't know. I just feel like it's something.
Grab a hair and run like hell.
Yeah, something like that. We don't think about the physique very much, do we? We're always talking about the encounter and what they looked like, but
right.
When you think in practical terms of how they're able to do stuff. And hi, Brent. He says it seems their neck would make it hard for them to see when on all fours. I think you'd be pretty limited, wouldn't you, to where? Because as far as I went, do you remember we talked to Randy Harrington?
Yeah.
And the power lifter, and he was saying that those muscles come up from the shoulders. They're creating that cone look because it's just muscle.
Hold on. Are we sure? So let me push back on that. Are we sure that cone shape is due to the muscle?
I asked him,
and not the sagittal crest, because some don't have that cone head shape, right? Some are flatter. And so it's that sagittal crest. Now, again, he is right about the muscles, right? But the reason that sagittal crest exists in great apes is to allow the muscles, for the jaw muscles, to basically wrap around him. Now, so he is right; it is muscle, but it's more about the jaw and the sagittal crest than it is anything else.
So maybe sometimes you hear that the younger ones have more rounder heads.
Mm-hmm.
Just going off, maybe it's something that develops and maybe makes it look, creates a more conical shape. I don't know, but I mean, I actually messaged him about that. I said, "So you're saying that those muscles are creating that?" And he thought, "Yeah, I mean, yeah." That's only what he thought. He doesn't know that, obviously.
Yeah. Well, obviously, all we can do is theorize. But again, it goes back to, we don't know how much time they spend on all fours. We don't know how, if at all, we don't know how much time they spend walking bipedally. We just don't know anything. But look at a gorilla, right? They've got massive muscles in their backs, their shoulders, but that doesn't stop them from knuckle walking, right? A lot of this, because a lot of that's also due to skeletal structure. What is your skeleton designed to do? How is your head designed to meet up with your spine? That's a big aspect of all this that we just don't have answers to, right? I mean, it's sort of like the question, not to work blue here, but this is a question people have asked for a long time: is, does Bigfoot have, I forget the name, the proper name of the bone off the top of my head, but great apes have a bone in their penis that allows them to do what they do. Well, humans don't. So the question then becomes, right? How do you know this question has been around in the community for a while? It's like, well, do they have one or not? And it's like, how do we know? There's no way you could even speculate on that, right? But it is one of those questions that actually does. It's like, if we could discover that, again, if we could have a body, then a lot of our questions would be answered. But at the same time, it is one of those questions that we have no answer for. Okay, so hold on. Gorillas, you're right. Gorillas do have much shorter legs, but look at a chimpanzee. Patty, you can line her up. She is very, very close to a chimpanzee. Chimpanzees are mostly quadrupedal as well. So they've got no problems there. But again, we just don't know. Unfortunately, it's like, I hate the fact that all we keep running up to is, like, that's the wall. Like, but I think your question is valid, and we need to. I think what you're really saying is we really need to rethink the questions we're asking, to say, this is what we're observing on them. How does that affect how they behave? How does that affect how they hunt? How does that affect how they go from point A to point B? I think it's a great question we need to be asking. Absolutely. Sort of like reverse engineer their life so that we can know where to be ahead of them to get evidence for them, instead of trying to keep tracking them down. What do we be where they're going to be, right?
Yeah. I'd love to. I don't know if anyone's ever done a. Hi, Jason. Jay. Raccoons also have a bone in their penis shaped like a chicken leg bone. Well said. Oh, I don't think he meant that. What was I going to say? It's knocked me off my. It'd be great to, because some people do say they run on all fours, is to make a body out of something with, bendy things and just work out. Has anyone ever done that? Tried to work out how that in a little model form?
I'm aware that they've created digital models when they were trying to break down the Patterson-Gimlin footage years ago. They actually had somebody wear one of those suits like they do in the movies, where they have the dots on them so the computer can monitor. And they used that to try and put a skeleton to Patty. I can't remember off the top of my head who did that, but that was something that they were able to do. And that's how this whole idea of how they walk being substantially different from humans that's a big thing. Like, they were able to sort of show that by creating that model. So I think you're right. We should take that model and take it to the next sort of that next level.
Well, if anyone out there is a model maker, get in touch. Let's talk about it. But yeah, that's just something that I just feel like you could do it with all sorts of things, I guess. But yeah, I didn't want to go into Bigfoot too much tonight because I thought you wanted. Did you not want to talk about beer and vodka at one point?
Not really. I don't care one way or the other. Actually, here's the thing: if we want to talk about beer and vodka, we should have my friend on. He actually, he works in the Austin Russian room. He infuses flavors into vodka. It's amazing.
Oh.
So he'd be fun to have on. Just let me know. I'll see if I can get him. But yeah, no, that is. But I think your question is aptly put. I just missed who said it. It just disappeared. But I saw the question was, haven't we moved beyond the ape question? No one's moved beyond anything. We don't have evidence for any of it. And let's take it one more step further. Why is it we have some that are very pongid looking, right? Like the skunk ape, like the Mayaka photo. I mean, that looks very pongid. But you have others that they look very, very human. Now, you could say it's just a difference in breeding populations, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we have one of the other issues that we're having trying to track down Bigfoot beyond what we've talked about before of the paranormal sort of sneaking into it. What if we've got, again, the moniker of Bigfoot is just everything's crashing into it. What if we have a pongid Bigfoot like Patty, like the swamp ape, but then we have something that's more caveman-esque, that's more ancient human. So maybe some are human, some are pongid, maybe some are giants. Like if you kind of look, let's use European history for a moment, right? You go back, most of Europe has giants, like true giants, humans that are of giant size. They've got ogres, which are sort of man beast things, but they're very tall. Then you have trolls, which are shorter than human. They're depicted as more primitive, larger nose, very thin, very short ears that live under bridges or in caves. Tell me that's not you can't tell me that's not a Neanderthal. That's exactly what Neanderthals look like. They're shorter, stockier, flatter heads, more prominent noses, smaller ears. You've got the troll. You've got the ogres. You could say that easily coincides with a Bigfoot. I think that also works with. I just got his name from not Gilgamesh. Beowulf, Grendel, the Grendel creature from Beowulf. It seems in many ways very Bigfoot-esque. Then you've got the true giants or Nephilim that are just giant humans where you get Jack the Giant Slayer from. It's entirely possible that same mix is here in the U.S. One of the things that we often never talk about is when the Spanish arrived here in the 1600s or in the 1400s rather, and in the 1500s when they were exploring North America, they talked about running across tribes of American Indians that were 7 to 8 feet tall all the time. Oh. And so, what if the real problem here is that we have not just like, even if you remove all the paranormal stuff, what if we've got a couple of different variants, but we all call them Bigfoot, but one is human, one, or human-esque, one isn't. And what if there's another variant in there? Like we need to really take this whole question back to the beginning and say, well, hold on, let's really start putting some information together, because there's just stuff that doesn't make sense. Why does it look like a giant orangutan in Florida? It looks like it's sort of a larger, more powerful chimpanzee in the Pacific Northwest with shorter hair. And then you got stuff that looks human, like just more primitive human in and around the South. Like that, none of this makes sense.
No.
Like, unless, of course, what we have are maybe 3 or 4 or 5 distinct, different things running around.
I was looking for something. I was trying to research something the other day, and I ended up looking at this video, and it was talking about the Tennessee wild man, something like, it's in Tennessee. Can't remember the exact name, but it's kind of on a par with Bigfoot. And I thought, hang on, I've never heard of, what's this about? And it's something other, but it's a bit more aggressive than Bigfoot. I thought, how many of these creatures are out there? And is that what people are seeing as well? Are these folklore, or is it true, or made up, or?
Or is it all the above?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, that's sort of the problem with all this is
is there not a bunch of monkey gorillas or in the Everglades? Is there not a group of them that escaped from somewhere living down there as well? I've heard that.
Yes. I've heard that as well, and I think that's possible. I don't think people are mistaking that for a skunk ape, right?
It depends what angle. And I know that sounds, but look at that bear video. The bears that are walking alongside the thing. At a certain angle, you could say that's the dog man. If you just saw a snout and a bit of ear. So
I would like to think a lot of people are probably more familiar with what a bear looks like, but I don't think your point is invalid by any stretch of the imagination. I think that may very well be the case. But again, here's the problem. We call them dogmen, right? Like Tex and I were discussing, what if there may be, relic populations of some of these larger lemurs that we have on fossil record? Like when you see them rebuilt, they look almost identical to what we would assume a dogman looks like. And that's assuming dogman's even a physical creature, not some sort of paranormal creature. Like this morning on my Bible study channel, I'm just sort of emotionally spent after all the craziness of the week, and I just started asking, let's ask some questions about this. Where is that line between if paranormal or spiritual and physical? Where is that line? Does that line even exist? Or man, I've been doing a lot today. Does that line even really exist? Right? The story I told this morning, I'll shorten it. A dude got into the occult and was getting ready to go to he was in college. He was going to go to the seminar on astral projection. He was tired, decided to go home. In the middle of the night, he wakes up and there's a naked green woman on his ceiling screaming at him, "You're not supposed to be here," and trying to reach out for him. And he's like, what's going on? Right. And when he, the next day he went to a friend of his who is the one who relayed all this to me. He's like, what happened? And my friend told him, it's like, you have to understand that thing was expecting you to be astral projecting at the time. This thing was watching you the entire time. You caught its attention. It expected you to go to this thing and then come back and try astral projecting. And so while your soul was out, your spirit was out of your body, it was going to sneak in. Oh. Well, if that's the case, and that sounds perfectly reasonable for the setup of the situation. He didn't say this ephemeral creature was floating above my bed. It was a physical creature that was it was solid. I have to be very delicate about this one, but I have accounts of a person who went through sleep paralysis. He was, you have the traditional sleep paralysis demons that he was being tormented by, but this one, he described it to me and 3 different other people who are sort of disconnected, who wouldn't have had that cross-pollination. They described seeing the same creature, only these other 3 people, they didn't see it while they were asleep. They saw it in the street or behind the houses, right? Oh. Physical creature, but one of the third person was the gentleman's daughter. She saw it in their house going through a wall. So you got to ask the question. So hold on, this is a sleep paralysis demon. It's moving through walls, but it's being seen as a solid entity by other parties. Where is this line? So the problem is we just keep having more. The more we look, the more and more questions we have. So I don't know. We got to find a way to start correlating this, right? And figuring out what's what.
Feels like it's the dial on the frequency button, isn't it? It's tuning right in, or it isn't. And if that's the case, what's going on there? I mean, I know you don't have the answer, but that's the thing, isn't it? Is why we're not always, we're teetering, seem to be on the cusp of something, and we don't seem to go the other way, though, do we?
Yeah,
I know some people have alien abductions or talk about that, but we have aliens coming into our lives or demons and whatever. When do we ever go into that world? Do we ever go into another world? Has anyone ever?
That depends on who you talk to, right? I mean, some of these 411 sites, people will talk, and they'll tell stories of being in the woods, seeing some sort of weird, light flickers, and then the area around them is completely different, right? Or being grabbed by something they can't see and being pulled into something, and just having it change, but then escaping, going back to where they were. I don't know. And it's like, really what you're talking about, you start getting to the realm of things like DMT. The people who take DMT, they talk about going to this city that's being created. People who have spiritual and supernatural visions in the Bible and prophets today, they talk about going and seeing some of these things on the other side of the veil. So I don't know. Maybe that is the case. And again, I think what we're doing right now, because we can talk to one another, I have, I think what we're really seeing, right? The more I've thought about it, it's like, what if the reason we're like, well, man, why there doesn't seem to be an end to all this? Well, maybe the problem is because we've spent centuries of putting things into the same box, right? No one's been able to really separate them out because we haven't really been able to talk to one another. Think about it. All of our information comes by researchers, right? Human beings who are they're making interviews, they're recording everything, and they're reporting back to us, right? Well, guess what? If all of our researchers for the last 40 years thought there was a Bigfoot, a one singular species that dominated all of North America, and it was just running around all over North America, and then every account they take is processed as it's a Bigfoot. It's just maybe a local variant. Well, then what we've got is 40 years of research that's getting paranormal accounts, accounts of different species, things, all of these things, and then collecting the lore, because they've also been collecting the lore of what people say they've seen around the city, right? Around that area. And now we get the lore thrown into it. I think the problem is we're just getting to that point now where we can all stop and talk in real time and be like, hold up. None of this makes sense. It was the bias of a lot of these researchers that maybe has prevented us from seeing the fact that this isn't one species, but rather multiple phenomena across the spectrum, both physical and paranormal. And the reason it just seems like we just keep hitting weirder and weirder stuff is we're just now able to really sort through it properly. I mean, think about it. Museums find stuff that they've had for a century, and they're like, oh, this was something brand new. We didn't realize this was an actual thing. We just rewrote because we finally had a genetic program capable to really sort of break things down. We discovered hundreds of new species of birds in North America alone because they look the same as another bird. But it was within the genetic studies they realized, hold up, we can't tell them apart, but they can tell each other apart. Oh. And these are different species of birds. We had to move birds that we had in one species to another species, even species that were named for them, because they weren't in the right place, genetically speaking. It wasn't until we could actually look at what they were, really look at the DNA of the birds that we could sort them back out. I think that's what's happening now. We're able to start sorting through a lot of this in real time and say, hold up, this stuff isn't making sense. It's not really coming together. Maybe we need to re-examine what we're looking at without that bias. Because what if everyone's right? I mean, like, here's the worst part. What if it isn't like the paranormal theory is correct, and the ape theory isn't correct, and the human theory isn't correct, and the Nephilim theory? What if all of these things are active? What if everyone's right?
That's going to be the crazy thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, how are we going to find out answers unless it's one thing controlling everything when it comes to paranormal? It's just we find out that there is a portal somewhere, or we all have this thing in us and it takes things to trigger it. I don't know. But, let's work out what Bigfoot is first and think of it as a flesh and blood creature, because that makes more sense, doesn't it?
for many accounts, I absolutely think that is a much easier explanation for them. Again, I go back to
almost, Jeff. Thank you.
not yet,
But
but my love alone should be able to warm you.
Well, that does. I mean, that keeps the chill off the air, keeps me, you know, breathing and all that good stuff. But I just want a little bit more.
I understand.
It's not like you don't give me enough. I'm greedy. I want more. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway. I think you're right. I think the physical makes the most sense for many of these encounters. But then you have the others that don't make sense. And again, we have differing descriptions. So again, I go back to what if we just have because here's the problem, right? We have one group's like, man, they're forest ninjas. If you're even within a 10-mile radius of them, they know where you are. They know what you've had for lunch. They know where you're going. You can't ever see them. They know everything and anything to do with the woods. And then they walk in front of a freaking truck, or they're walking under some dude's stand. It's like, and of course, everyone makes a mistake from time to time. Yeah, or maybe what we have is a physical population that's really small, really small. It's just, yeah, they're trying to avoid us, but they're also not necessarily going to be like, Mission Impossible.
Yeah, exactly. In the middle of nowhere. Oh, let's backtrack on my tracks just in case there's a hunter out.
I mean, if you stop to think about it, again, if their population was less than 10,000 and they lived in very, very small groups, we'd never see them, right? Well, but that's the thing, Titan. I'm certain juveniles are the ones that are going to see the most often, but people see 7-8 foot tall, critters. They are seen. It's not always the small ones; it's the big ones. So, isn't it just easier to believe that there's just a very small population? Look at, again, there are animals like the Borneo rhino. We didn't see a thing for a century. It's a rhinoceros, not the brightest bulb in a drawer, right? And it completely avoided cameras for a century because it had a small population. They just have to be where you aren't, just by a little bit. But then again, it goes back to, but what if there's a difference? What if there's pongid ones? What if there's human ones? And those humans aren't actually Bigfoot. There's something else. And maybe they are trying to avoid us. Who knows?
Just something I've thought about then. Let's break down another little thing that we think. Why do we think Bigfoot has a great sense of smell, like a scent dog? Why do we think that?
I think it's the best. I think the problem is it comes back to the assumptions that we've made, right? And that are made by researchers. It's, well, we have trouble finding them. Maybe the reason we can't find them is because they can smell us coming, like a deer can or a dog would. Well, but that's us rationalizing something.
Yeah,
right?
But physically, would it be able to have a good sense of scent? Because not all animals do.
No, primates don't have primates don't have a good sense of smell. To have a good sense of smell, come here. Actually, this is a great opportunity for you to be here, dog. Come here. And of course, she's ignoring me now. Come here, little dog. Come here. Come here. You're going to be helpful. You get to help me. Come here.
You will come here.
Yes, you will come here, little dog. Okay, say hi to Danielle and everybody.
Too. I'm sure.
So look at this dog, right? This dog is she's part Chihuahua, part rat terrier. Look at how long her nasal cavity is, right? That you need that kind of let's not undress me on television. You need that kind of, okay, you can go back to mommy now if you don't want to be on camera. You need that surface area to have those receptors. That's why pugs can't smell jack diddly crap, because we've crushed their face in this horrible desire for humans to control nature that we have. We've bred them to have no sense of smell, literally zero sense of smell. You need that distance. We actually, humans have a better sense of smell than most of the great apes because we have more receptors in our sinus cavity. There is no reason to believe that Bigfoot's out there like just smelling the ground like some sort of bloodhound, being like, we got to go that way, right? We don't. There's no reason for that at all. It's we're trying to create a reason for something when we can't figure something else out. And again, the bigger problem here is a lot of people who are unfortunately it should never be taken the wrong way. Not everyone who's doing this are actually experts, right? The problem is that because it's a fringe science, we don't necessarily have some of the best people researching this and doing this. If we did, we would have money, we would have people out there, we might actually get more information, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah. So I was just looking somewhere. But yeah, we need to break these things down, I think, because we do have this perception based on what we think. But actually, when you think about it, some of it's just not possible, or it just doesn't make sense to put these attributes on this creature when it doesn't have that snout. But Les hints, he says, what if they have a Jacobson organ
like a reptile? Let me look into that one. I'm not as familiar with that, but again, the problem is now we're switching species, right? The problem is we start having to become really exotic with it. And I'm willing to think that they may have some sort of extrasensory perception of, like, say, electronic fields or things like that. But we do have some minor precedent for that. I'll look into it. It's possible. But I think the problem here is when we don't have an answer, we're creating one from our imagination instead of saying, okay, we don't know why this is happening. Let's wait until we get better information. But better information never shows up. So we're floundering around for an answer. And so we never really come to a better understanding because we're looking for something we don't have.
Yeah, it's been interesting just thinking about the physical aspects of this creature. And Albert says, I think we are projection on speculations on this creature.
No, I agree. I think a lot of times, again, we're projecting our own ideas and concepts on it. It's sort of like what we see in anthropology with some of these other cultures, right? We're like, well, how could they do X, Y, Z? Or maybe it's from this, or maybe it's from that. And what we're doing is we're projecting our own culture on some other culture. In the same way, we do this with other animals. We project how we would perceive something on an animal, or what we think that an animal would prefer versus what it actually does. I think it's exactly what we're doing with a lot of these creatures.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I was trying to just multitask.
You were trying to figure out what a Jacobson.
Yeah, and I couldn't find it in time, but that's okay. Yes. Anyone? We're going to finish a little bit early tonight. Are you all right for another 10 minutes or so?
Oh yeah. No, I just, like I said, I've already told him I just have to pop out about 10 minutes early tonight. Yeah, I will be on another show this evening. Sparks of the Paranormal on YouTube.
Oh, Sparks of the Paranormal.
Yeah, it's a smaller channel, but I think you'd like him. He's like us, right? He's looking for more answers. Now he leans more paranormal than Bigfoot or some of these others, but it's he's a great guy, and I'll be over there at 7:00 Central Standard.
Cool.
So it just means I have to duck out a little early tonight.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Seeing if anyone's got anything to add to what we're talking about tonight. I can't think of anything else, Ree. It's, it's hearing. Why will its hearing be any better than, say, our hearing?
Well, so here's another thought, though. Maybe it's not necessarily that they're better at it than us. They just know what to listen for.
Yeah, that's...
Again, I go back to, if your life depends on something, you're going to be better at it. Our lives do not depend on us understanding the world around us the same way. You go to some of these primitive tribes in South America or even in Africa or in Asia, they are very keenly aware of their environment. They hear things we don't hear. They see things we don't see. Why? Because their lives depend on it, right? So, I mean, that's a big thing. But it sorry. No.
I say they'd be quite weather dependent, wouldn't they, with the wind as well for smells, for that kind of thing. I just don't know how that changes the way that they hunt for food, and how do the way other animals hunt for food, or even not necessarily to kill something, but just hunting for, smelling out roots or whatever plant life and stuff like that.
Who says they have to smell it out? Maybe they just recognize plants for what they are, right? I mean, again, they don't have to be, even if they have a human level intelligence, though maybe they don't. Great apes will recognize plants for what they are because they know what they are. They know the plant. They recognize it. They do it by sight, just like we do. Maybe there is some scent involved, but I don't think they're necessarily like some pig, like hunting for a truffle, right? They just like, hey, I know I can eat that plant. Let's go eat that plant.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Titan says, "No, Jason, they do not have the distractions we have. They're more in tune. If we lived in the woods, we would develop better senses." I believe that.
And maybe it's not better senses, but rather that we are more. You would be better trained in how to listen. It's like developing a very sensitive palate for foodies, right? It's not that they have a better sense of taste, but they've trained their senses to know what to look for. It's all about training. I don't think they smell or see or hear any better, but they are better trained because their lives depend on it. I mean, that's just it.
Yeah, I think so. Western Plain says maybe I think he means they have abilities we don't know about for whatever reason.
Or maybe we have powers and abilities we don't necessarily recognize either. I mean, but it goes back to. I think that. So here's the thing. I'm actually very sympathetic towards. I just forgot his name. He just opened the Bigfoot Museum. He was on Finding Bigfoot. Cliff Barachman. I'm very sympathetic towards his view that Bigfoot. He's like, I've never seen anything that would make me believe Bigfoot is anything other than a physical creature. Right? That is his. That's his main statement. He's made it multiple times, so I'm not putting words into his mouth. That's literally what he said. On the same hand, we got a ton of researchers, including James Fay, who will say, hey, I think they have some sort of paranormal aspect. And as we've talked about this before, to have such a large discrepancy kind of tells us something's up. But I'm very sympathetic towards him, which is why I'm towards that viewpoint, because it makes a lot of sense. Which is why I think there is that sort of separation. But the problem is we keep overlapping the two. We keep wanting to say Bigfoot's paranormal, but it's like, well, hold up. Maybe we need to chuck the entire name Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Let's chuck all of that out to the side and create a brand new name for these different phenomena. And then let's create a Venn diagram and say, do they overlap? Where do they overlap? And then that asks us why that they overlap, right? So maybe that's just it. I mean, maybe that's the real issue here, is that ultimately, I feel like what we're fighting over is the name Bigfoot, which is why we're getting nowhere. Maybe we have to chuck it all until we can really delineate what everything is. Maybe whatever Patty is gets to wear the name Bigfoot, and then we can come up with names for these other things.
There you go. That's it.
Absolutely. Okay, so you know what, Iron? Hold on. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to put that, because I am working on a book, and I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. The Chupacabra. The Chewbacabra.
Chewbacabra. Well, there's a lot of work to be done, isn't there? This is the thing. There's a lot of work to be done. How do you go through everything and strip it all down? And do we start afresh? Do we try and, move forwards from here? There's a lot to work on, isn't there?
Well, there is. But here's the thing, right? And no, Albo X, we don't, because part of the scientific name is actually knowing what you're looking at, unfortunately. But let me take this step back. Maybe, and I'm the first one to say we need to go back to square one, but maybe square one isn't where we would really be at, because we do have a lot of information. What we need to do is re-examine the assumptions in the preconceptions that we've brought to this entire thing, right? Like I said before, what if the big problem was that early in this whole thing, we had the researchers like John Green and the others going out, and their frame of reference was Bigfoot. So we put everything into the Bigfoot box, and they started this. Not that they did anything wrong, it's just they didn't recognize that there were certain discrepancies because they had a bias. All humans have biases, but now that we're all able to create these communities and we can talk to one another, we're only now able to say, well, hold up. It's been within the last 10 years that we've been able to say, hold up, none of this makes sense, right? We're seeing these things these things aren't fitting. So we're only coming to that point now where we can say, hey, maybe we're trying to make two things fit that don't. So I don't think we're necessarily, even though I'm like, hey, let's start from square one, maybe we're not starting from the square one, but what we're doing is we need to re-examine our preconception. So it is going to take hard work. I think it is going to take a lot of discipline, and we needed to, as a community, really talk through that so that we can create protocols to really sort of see what we're dealing with. Because I imagine once, a few years down the road, we'll have done all this, we can start creating Venn diagrams. And it's like, where's the overlap and why? Again, a lot of people for years have been looking at, demonic possession and UFOs and saying, hey, we get some weird, demonic possession, paranormal activity. There's a lot of overlap with the UFO with UFO endeavors. Why? It's like that Venn diagram. There's a lot of overlap, and then it begs you to ask the question. Maybe we'll find there's one or two areas where there are overlap, but then maybe we'll find other overlaps over here. But then maybe we find some stuff where it's like it doesn't overlap with anything at all. And that allows us to say, okay, this is that, and this is that. And then we can start being where we need to be to record these creatures, to get samples of all of these different creatures. And so we can start picking out where they go.
Well, it sounds like a good plan if we can, pull it off somehow. And I think, the more we talk about it, there are ways of doing this, or at least working towards it. Yeah. Just something Western Plain says, and I think this, I think about this about Sasquatch. Maybe our problem is we have too many beliefs, and it becomes complicated because who's right? Well, as Thomas Steenberg says, stick to the facts, and I think treat Bigfoot as a missing person. What would you do? You'd stick to the facts. Think about court cases. You have to stick to the fact. You can't come into court with what you think, maybe because of that. Yeah. And if we really strip away all the things we believe and just stick to the facts and start from there, that has to be the best place to start from.
Completely agree.
Is to pour the concrete first before you start building on it, because you start putting in just dodgy theories or stuff, and it's not going to work. But we will continue this another time.
We will.
I know you want to go, so
that
you need to go.
I do need to go. Why would I ever want to stop doing this show with you, Daniela?
I know. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just hurt that you need to arrange another interview on the same night.
In my cold, cruel heart.
I just got to suck it up and deal with it,
Stay strong.
I'll try. But thank you for just showing up anyway. It was great having you here. We'll be back next week, of course, talking about more interesting stuff. And I'll be on the Bigfoot Cafe, probably on the Researchers Report. So until the next time, everyone, take care, and I'll see you all soon. Good night.
Have a good one.